Okay. The Hitchhiker by Roald Dahl, 1916 and 1990. In this story, The Hitchhiker by Roald Dahl, there we have already discussed about the characters, the narrator, the hitchhiker, old man, the policeman, and so on. We are not repeating them. The narrator, as a successful writer, is one of the character in the story, and on the way to London, he gives a lift to a peculiar hitchhiker. The hiker was peculiar in the sense he was peculiar in the sense that the narrator is self-assured. We are characterizing them here as well. The narrator is self-assured, comfortable, and proud of himself as well. He was the writer, he was proud of himself. But what happens in the story is there is uneducated hitchhiker, and this uneducated hitchhiker was skillful in his profession or in his vocation that he is involved in. Though he was uneducated, he was skillful, and this uneducated hitchhiker manages to teach the writer or teach the narrator a couple of surprising lessons there in the story. As they are on the way to, writer is on the way to London, and hitchhiker says he is going to the horse racing, and then racing just his profession involved in his profession. That is, we know this later. So there are so many surprising lessons. Sometimes he teaches him how to deal, how to speak with the policeman. Sometimes what he does and how does he do them, all the sorts of things. And as a skillful fingersmith, what actually he does. So he teaches him these surprising lessons on the way, and not only on the way. These have become the very lessons for the writer on his throughout his life as well. So this is all about the plot, all about the things in the story. Roald Dahl's story, The Hitchhiker, is about a man. The narrator there, this narrator picks up Hitchhiker while he was driving to London in his brand new BMW 1975 car. Uh, this is what happens in the story in the beginning. The narrator is used to picking up hitchhikers by his understanding. He had the understanding that those people who ask for the lift, they might have some difficulties, and he has felt this difficulty himself as well. That's why the narrator is used to picking up those hitchhikers, and he knows how difficult it can be when you carry the hitchhiker. Also, he has the understanding, he has this feelings, this experience as how is this difficult to just pick up the hitchhiker and just leave them on their destination. In this context, we can relate the story of that context. In 1960s and 1950s, hitchhiking was even dangerous because it was the time of that Cold War, and he
So
talks
finally,
about the difficulty. When the hitchhiker gets into the car, just he enters into the car, he gets into it. Then he says they introduce each other, and the narrator asks him where he was going, and the hitchhiker informs him that he is going for the horse racing, and then uh, he is skilled in his trade, in his vocation. The author describes the hitchhiker as a small ratty-faced man with grey teeth. This small ratty-faced man has been described. The hitchhiker has been described in that peculiar way. His face, his bodily structure, and also his doings. All these become peculiar throughout the story. The man mentions he is going to the horse races, but he does not bet or work to ticket machines. Throughout the conversation, just he makes the writer clear about uh, his uh, his destination. Am I audible? Is the audio clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because of the new car with the narrator, as he saw, the hitchhiker saw a new car with the narrator. He guesses that he must be a successful writer because of his brand BMW new car. And the writer, the hitchhiker guesses the writer must be a successful writer. And but however, the hitchhiker would not trust the car because he was uneducated, and he was also proud of himself. On the other hand, the self supremacy we can see here regarding their understanding, and we'll critically analyze this later. He encourages the driver on the way. If you have gone through the story, you might see here he asks about the speed of the car, and then the writer tells him that according to the company or its producer, the car has the full speed of 129 mile per hour. So he tells this to the hitchhiker as well. And after listening this, just he was in rush, and he was found in rush, and he encourages the writer, or the, let's say, driver here, to drive the car to the full speed of that 129 mile per hour. While the car was running at they were having discussion on various topics and so on. And just he was sometimes convincing him and encouraging him to run a bit faster and more speed. uh, Already it was over speed. It was, the car was running at 120 mile per hour. Then on the way, a policeman notices it, and then he follows the car, and he makes it just even more on the speed than them. The policeman makes it stop the car, and then he investigates who the people are and where they are going and so on. Then he writes. The man takes the notebook from his pocket, and he writes down all these sorts of things, like their name, their address, where they are going, and also the names and the address, and other, let's say, other details in a book of tickets. And this is very interestingly and in dialogic form that presented in the story between policeman and the writer, and sometimes with the policeman and the hitchhiker. So he tells about some um, misunderstandings, and even he lies with the policeman. He does not tell all this detail to the copper or the policeman there. Policeman tells about the 5 miles. Also, after he takes all these sorts of information, the policeman tells him about 50 miles an hour over this limit. He just teaches them that limitation of the speed as well, and he wants them that they would have to go to the court for the overspeeding. And he tells this, he informs this. The narrator is scared of the ticket, and also he was told about the punishment. He was told about the punishment, and policeman informed too. That the policeman informed to both of them. Here, the narrator was scared of. Is afraid of listening this punishment and the ticket by the policeman. So he decided to go straight up to London, and just to consult his solicitor, his advisor there, how to get rid of this punishment or this sorts of difficulty. Just he decided to do this. On the other hand, the hitchhiker convinced the writer or the narrator that he felt relieved, because he says, the hitchhiker says, no, it's a minor thing. Just they will have some penalty with some money that you won't be uh, you would be fine, but won't be just suffer into the courts. That he convinced him, and then he felt relieved as well after convincing he was convinced by the hitchhiker. Then they further begin talking on their jobs, their careers. Again, what actually writer asks what he does, and so on. Again, the hitchhiker informs him that he is involved in highly skilled trade. He does not say directly or straightforwardly, but he says, "I am skilled in highly skilled trade," and also he says he is proud of his occupation or his uh, job. He is proud of it as anybody could be in the entire world. So as they are satisfied, they are proud of their job. I'm even more proud of my job. The hitchhiker says to the writer. The hitchhiker tells the writer the nature and the skills for the job he is involved into. Like there must be carefulness. You must be careful, and also he shows his fantastic fingers to the writer, or long fingers, beautifully arranged, and they seem like silversmith or like the doctors who have been taking operation. These beautiful fingers, and also the hitchhiker says 100 times they must be more careful, and it is more difficult, 100 times difficult than playing the piano. As the writer asked, "Are you a piano player then?" Then Hitchhiker responded him, "No, I'm not piano player, but I must be, or the people involved in our job must be even 100 times is more careful, and we need uh, more skilled in our job, and it is 100 times even more difficult than piano playing." Further, the hitchhiker says there is not one person in 10 million that can learn simply what they do or what he does. So there is not 1 person in 10 million people, 10 million, 10 into 10 lakh. So even not a single person in that list, means how highly skillful does he think himself, or he thinks himself here in his profession. And he says, does not tell about the job straightforwardly, though he tells, asks, and again he convinces to make the writer feel some comfort, but he does not tell him or his job straightforwardly. The hitchhiker then shows the belts on the way. Then he shows the writer the shoelace, the wristwatch, the driving license, key, even the key and pairs of keys on it, and also bunch of key and a beautiful ring with pearls that the ring belonged to his wife, and all sorts of things. And all these things, they belong to the writer or the narrator. And looking at these belongings, the writer remained unnoticed when that the hitchhiker took all these sorts of these from himself, and how they were taken by the hitchhiker during the journey. And this was very this very puzzled to the writer, and also he got puzzled of these. Are these, do they belong to you? And he, before he showed the watch to the writer, he asked about the time, what time is it? And just look onto the watch in the car, just writer informed. The hitchhiker did not believe him. Rather, he said, though we cannot believe on the watch in the car, what does your watch say? He asks the question, and then he looks at his wrist, on the wrist, and does not find him the watch here on the wrist. Then he got that puzzle, another puzzlement. In the same way, he found that all these belongings were unnoticingly were taken by the hitchhiker. Then he saw another ring over in his fingers, and just he told about the story. And this ring belonged now to the 18th century reign of King George III. So the history talks about this ring, and also that belonged to that person, that great person, the King George III. The writer asked him, now he was a pickpocket, and writer guessed he must be a pickpocket. So you are pickpocket then? He asked. The writer asked, and the hitchhiker answered, that's coarse and vulgar word. That's not good word. That the word you said, pickpocket, to us or our profession is not good. Pickpocket is very simpler, and pickpocket is a vulgar, or pickpockets are vulgar people, or who only do the very little mature jobs. They are not profession by their nature or the job. They do simply they sneeze the money, or they take the money from the people on the streets. That's very mature job, and I do not do so. And that's not the fit word. That's not the appropriate word for us. He convinces the writer. Finally, he spoke of the words solemnly and proudly. The writer, and he says, "I'm a professional fingersmith. I'm a professional fingersmith means I'm expert and with my fingersmith." Like he also explored that one, explained on it, like silversmith, like goldsmith, as they are like goldsmith. Let's say he takes example of goldsmith and silversmith, as they are expert, they are professional in their making golds and rings and silver and so on. Similarly, he is very skillful man in his fingers. That's why he introduces himself finally as professional fingersmith, and he explained on it. Now, lastly, he also informs the writer regarding what he does, how he does that work, how skillfully that he does something. He tells about his profession to the writer. This makes writer curious to learn something more, as the hitchhiker proves that he is a skilled workman by showing the writer's belt, shoelace, and many other things that belong to the writer. The hitchhiker then proudly announces that he has stolen both books from the policeman as well. He goes on to the race meetings. Then he just stand around there, around the race. Then he watches the people up there, especially to the rich people and the winners. But he says he does not uh, take care or does not take anything from the poor ones. Only he takes, watches the people, or just looks at the people who are rich and who are the winners in the race meetings there, horse race meetings. So Fingersmith never get. Then the writer asks him, "How many times have you been caught?" Then Fingersmith, uh, he says, Hitchhiker responds him, "Fingersmiths never get caught, and so far I have not been caught even once. And I'm so much skillful in my trade, in my job, in my vocation." He convinces this, and the writer got again puzzled. Finally, he also informs to the narrator. What he informs to the narrator is he has also taken the books from the policeman's pocket when they were on the while they were on the uh, way to their journey, and they just were caught by the policeman for their overspeeding. And the policeman just noted down these all sorts of information in the pocket book, in the pocket, that notebook. And from policeman's pocket, he tells the writer that he has taken all these two notebooks from the policeman's pocket as well. And then policeman, the writer was all scared of this, and though he was convinced that he would not, he had not to go into the court, but he was not convinced that very comfortably. But after looking at these two notebooks that the hitchhiker has seized from or taken from the policeman's pocket, now policeman has left. He also convinces policeman has left nothing as the proof, and he convinced him of it. That's why he convinced him, the writer, not to be afraid of the situation. Then they stop the car on the middle of the way before they reach to the next junction. And then as they stop the car, they got out of the car, and then they collect this, and then they burn those books taken from policeman's pocket, and that means the proof has been burnt now. There has been nothing there is nothing left as a proof uh, that can declare that they were having overspeed, they were on overspeed. The writer then exclaimed him with a fantastic, as if he said, "How fantastic fellow you are!" The writer exclaimed him. He exclaimed, and then listening this, also the hitchhiker thanked him, and thanked to the writer, and he said, "It's always nice to be appreciated." And in this way, the story is over. Now we have some explanation, further explanation here, as we analyze the story. Utsa, are you there? Okay. We will have some discussion after 10-15 minutes, but before that, let us simply analyze the story as we go through the story here. Through this story, the hitchhiker Roald Dahl may be trying to share something with us, with the reader. Uh, like simply, we can say that special skills, sometimes your education, or whether you remain uneducated, it does not mean that you are lacking special skills. Like this has been proved by the hitchhiker as well. He was uneducated, but he had some those special skills. He was very expert and professional by his fingers, or into that trade that he was involved in. So here, Roald Dahl may be trying to tell us that people with some special skills, without education even can do more or can do better than educated people. So as a writer, his conviction is thinking of himself was, he was comfortable and he was self-assured, and he thought himself the educated ones. But there he learned so many lessons from this uneducated person throughout the journey. This is one analysis we can make here. A man with mystery over grammar. We can see throughout his speech there he uses double negatives. Sometimes double negative means the meaning becomes positive in some cases. So this is lack of his education, and the mastery over grammar and writing skills may not be able to tackle with some like tricky situations. Uh, can you say what the hitchhiker told the writer on the way when they meet policeman? Any one of you?
He told him about this job, right?
Moreover, yeah, he told about his job, but moreover, when they met the policeman, how did he teach, or what did he teach the writer how to deal with the policeman? To stay calm and not, that means not talk much. Yes, one thing. Next, the next one is, like, let me read out this. It's on page number 78 on in your that text compiled textbook. There's even sillier. He answered, "There's no fun working them, sorry, lousy machines, and uh, so as you have to deal with them, stay calm, governor." He says, he addresses the hitchhiker addresses the writer as saying, Governor, you stay calm. So do not talk much. Do not uh, do not answer all their questions, and stay calm and have patience. So you won't have any trouble and any problem. This was the tricky situation where the writer was taught even by this uneducated person, uneducated fellow. That's the interesting part here. uh, and it is one lesson to the writer. Similarly, if we look further, there are other lessons as well. and all these sorts of tricky situations, how to face with them. But the same situation can be easily tackled by a person with extraordinary skills and no education. Your literacy with numerical values or the language sometimes may function less or may cease, but your skills are even there to tackle uh, by yourself in those extraordinary and tricky situations. This is what the writer Roald Dahl might be sharing with the reader. As we look further through this story, the writer may be trying to see the policemen are the most ill-mannered people in the world as well. They say for them there is not the speed that is concerned, but for the people they are just there to punish them. So their sorry, their level of thinking, see, is too poor as well. It might be shown, and they lack a sense of humor as well. No, but sometimes, as both of them have done some mistake, some wrong, like writer was on overspeed, and this person hitchhiker had some lying while he was asked by the policeman, and policeman was right in another way. Policeman was right to tell them about the punishment because it was his duty, and also punishment after you crime, after you commit the crimes. This is another, might be another sharing. So the story might also be trying to remind us not to judge the people by looking at their outfit or outwardly, and also an ordinary man can have various potentialities, like that has been seen in through this uneducated hitchhiker. So education has not only to do, so you may have some potentiality hidden. We have to just respect it and consider and also value it. That may be another uh, analysis we can make. Similarly, we can see the writer describes the hitchhiker's appearance as a ratty face, means rat. And this is person how he has been personified, described here. He believes that when normal human beings think of ratty type of people, they are just described as stereotypical, and they have their stereotypical reaction, and that will be the person is selfish, he is not good, he is dirty, he is disloyal, he is violent, seems violent through this description as well. And this hitchhiker is described through that way. Probably simply might be criminal. His outlook, that his gesture, his physical shape, let's say, that is also there shown as a as violent and abnormal, or like criminal, let's say. This has been his appearance has been described and in that way. Similarly, the hitchhiker's appearance is described as small, ratty-faced man with gray teeth. This gray teeth, uh, rat-like eyes, ratty face, biralago the rat of the rat, and also not cat, rat-like face and eyes, slightly pointed ears as well, and also like of the same rat. And this is he is wearing the clothes, and he has a grayish colored jacket and enormous pocket. So how is the person, how is the fellow seem seem in the story, is shown in the story through this description. uh, we may, as a reader, we may think of his nature of the nature of the person. In another words, we can say that he resembles this person hitchhiker, this resemblance of human with the rat. So Roald Dahl's description of hitchhiker similarly to the rat, this may assume that, or we may assume that the hitchhiker is probably a lonely tone, murderer, some sorts of criminal, other sorts of criminal person has been involved in some criminal doings. So it makes the reader, we can predict that something bad, something uh, uh, interesting will happen involving the narrator and the hitchhiker. There is going to take place something interesting throughout the story. You can look at from their appearance. And as we look further in the story as well, Hitchhiker has very fast hands, very skillful hands, and he is aware of smoking. Yes, he manages to roll off that cigarette in just 5 seconds. That's the interesting part. In the Before he tells the reality what he does and what he eats, he just uh, he smokes on the car in the car and on the car, and then he manages to roll off that his cigarette within 5 minutes. So how skillful is he? You can look at from this as well. Then he also manages to kick off the narrator's watch, wallet, shoelace, and driving license, even key things, and many more things, diary. This these expensive uh, purloinings as well. So these all belonging to the writer. He snatches them, and the writer does not remain noticed, or he remains unnoticed about these sorts. So from this, how skillful and how good at in managing and just working with hands, fingers, let's say. The hitchhikers has been extremely explored or exemplified, or just described here as with having talented hands that make the reader, that make us resume that hitchhiker has been hiding all along, and his amazed fingers, um, skills of this fingersmiths. We can also assume that probably he is a pickpocket, and the writer asks, "Are you a pickpocket then?" Then he says, "Pickpocket is vulgar word. It is not good and appropriate word. And even pickpockets are very simple and they do a mature job." And he convinces the writer he does something extraordinary. He thinks himself professional. Professional means one who is expert in one's doings. And also again, the author makes the reader assume in that case that it surprises the reader. And in this case, the hitchhiker is actually a fingersmith. As you look apparently and clearly on the top position of the pickpocket's career. So that's why he has regarded himself the professional. Simply, we can see some noticeable characteristics here. Some hitchhikers through his hitchhiker's language, and also that he manages to criticize everything as he looks down the every other type of the job out there. Like he has the doubt on the writer's car, first of all, and also sometimes he claims, like, "My job is 100 times more difficult than a piano player." This is how he looks others' job, and how he looks of himself, or his skill, or his nature, or overall his understanding of himself. And also, any sword can learn how to do that. Any dwarf means any person. Simply he says any person can play piano, but my job is, he does not uh, reveal this what he does, but he says his job was 100 times more difficult than simply piano playing. And the two remarks made by the man are important to be noticed here, to be noted here. The first one is, we can say that the secret of life is to become extremely good at something that is very hard to do. So his lesson from this hitchhiker, we got one lesson, and the very first lesson is the secret of life. Life is all about to do this, to achieve this, and the secret of life is to become extremely good at something, whatever you do. And we must be very expert and professional in doing that one. So extremely good at something that is very hard to do, that's really difficult. Like he is skillful, highly skillful in his job, the very first thing. The very second thing is the work is highly admirable, that has been done with great skill, great genius, and also wonderful interest. He has interest on it. He has the self respect on his job, and also he is highly admiring his job. That's another thing we note down from hitchhiker's perspective. Am I audible? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, we can further analyze like hitchhiker criticizing every other jobs, isn't it? So, piano player simply thinking very minor, policemen's like he says, copper and why to tell all these sorts of uh, necessity and necessary explanations, why to share with them and so on. So his nature, his outlook, and his manner of criticizing every job, that makes us think that he must be incredibly skilled and talented, and his job is the most knowledgeable job out there. We may think this looking at his explanation. So from this we also know that life is full of dangers, difficulties. It's an adventure. So there are some sorts of pleasures and difficulties or sorrows, but after all, life is the secret of life is to become very good at something we do or we are involved in. Though this is hard to do, but we must be extremely good enough and excellent in the things we do. However, there may be many troubles um, we can face. We have to dare to face them, those difficulties. This is another interesting insight we can take from the story. And also it is true that the work which is done with great skill and this wonderful interest is even highly admired by other people as well. Like the writer admired his job, his skill, and his excellency in his doing. Even during the journey, writer was, let's say, one way looted, or the other way his belongings were taken, but he was remained all unnoticed. After, if the hitchhiker hadn't shown him those belongings, perhaps the writer uh, would not have uh, learnt about his skill or genius, that skill or wonderful interest in something. So he is that expert in his fingers. Another part we also interestingly you can look at from the story is that the readers, as we go through the story, hitchhiker is in the criminal business. Even though all the clues they aid up to us regarding this information, there is the relationship between the narrator and hitchhiker that has been presented in a surprising way and unpredictable way. As the relationship, this turns out that a successful writer becomes the friend of the hitchhiker, and also he supports him after giving the lift. And Roald Dahl might be teaching us here a little lesson in this story, even two most opposite people in the society, and they can have something in common, and then that makes them friends. So, as we see, uh, the writer asks, after looking at these bills, these all belongings, then he will ask the hitchhiker, "Will you give them to me or not?" And the hitchhiker responds, "You have helped me. You have greatly helped me throughout this journey. You have given me the lift, and I won't take these sorts of things from you people." And also, he says, "As I go to the horse racing, I only take the things from the rich people, from the winners, not from the poor." So look at to whom to provide that the place in their uh, trade, let's say, in their job. That's another interesting part, beautifully presented by the hitchhiker. So what can be the theme of, just the theme or the uh, s- um, central idea of the main theme of the story? Any one of you? Can you just express your opinions? Can you put your opinions regarding the theme of the story? Uh,
Skills is more crucial than education.
skill is even more crucial in some sorts of life-related skill. Skill means your life-related skill, one thing. And we don't think that Hitchhiker has been here just to, through the Hitchhiker, the writer makes us aware that he has done nothing wrong. He has done nothing harm to the writer. Just writer gave the lift to the hitchhiker, and also he helped in, and through the writer, through this hitchhiker, the author taught us these lessons. Okay, one thing. What next? Is there any misutilizing, violating of the? Yes, please. Good. That's interesting. Good. And anybody else? During the discussion session, we have to take part as well. Otherwise, as we remain always silent, will not be uh, anything good for us. So you guys have the time now for your discussion. Let me ask some questions here. Has the driver, or let's say the writer, done anything wrong? Has the writer done anything wrong? Okay, one thing. Uh, because it is one risk for him, one thing. And what about the violating the traffic rules? Is policeman wrong with just telling about the punishment that that writer or the driver should be paid, punished? Yes, good. Uh, okay, this Hitchhiker was originally published in the July 1977 issue of the Atlantic Monthly. Uh, in Atlantic Monthly, this Atlantic Monthly is a magazine, and this story was in 1977. This was written, and later by the writer, it was included in his story collection, the wonderful story of Henry, Sugar, and six more. So this is interesting part that beautifully presented there through the story. For discussion, we have further two questions here. Uh, Now, let us listen and think of these questions, and also you'll try to analyze them in detail. Do you agree with the hitchhiker that the secret of life is to become very, very good at something that's very, very hard to do? Whether you agree or disagree, the question here is, the hitchhiker says the secret of life. is to become very good at something, and that's very hard to do. Think of it. And the very second question is the hitchhiker, in your opinion, a good man or a bad man? So, what makes him bad if you say him bad? If what makes him good if you say good? Does the narrator of the story really believe that the hitchhiker is a fantastic fellow? After all, the narrator of the story tells, and he really believes at the end of the story. And for this, he says, "You are a fantastic fellow," and he exclaims uh, to the hitchhiker. The narrator exclaims. So, saying this fantastic fellow, and even in return, he was responded, or in response, the response he gets is, "Thank you, governor." And he said, "It's always nice to be appreciated," and the story is over. So, in that way, how do you characterize, how do you judge, or how do you look at hitchhiker's characterization? How do you make this characterization? That's another interesting question. So think of these two questions. And now let me share one another part. uh, this is, you will get in detail, further detail in the LMS. I'll upload all these. I have the time today. Now let me stop this sharing, and on 19 people here. There is one, if you have the time today in the daytime, you can watch there one discussion and analysis of Hitchhiker. The link I'll provide in the same slide. Just consult in the daytime, not now. After 12, you consult and take these notes from there. Okay. Please let me take the attendance very soon. Are there till within a minute any questions? Okay, just go through these slides and further materials. I'll upload also the dangerous game, the story into PDF there. You can visit to the LMS after 12. And tomorrow we have holiday, so just read and go through the story, the most dangerous game, and prepare for your presentation, and write the summary after you read the story as well of next, the most dangerous game. First you read it, and then you write, and you prepare for your presentation for tomorrow. Okay, this much for today. Thank you very much, everyone.